Ever feel like you're constantly bombarded with information?
Yeah.
Like, it's tough to know what to believe.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to navigate the sea of information these days.
Right. And sometimes it feels like people or even things are trying to manipulate what you think, like subtly leading you towards certain conclusions.
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely forces at play trying to shape our beliefs, both online and offline.
That's exactly what we're diving into today. Two techniques that, believe it or not, have some surprising similarities.
Similarities? That sounds intriguing. What are these techniques?
One targets AI.
Okay, and the other?
The other is used on actual humans.
Wow, that's a pretty wild comparison. One's all about technology and the other's about psychology, right?
Exactly. But get this, they both exploit kind of similar vulnerabilities in how beliefs are formed and how easily they can be swayed.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. What are we looking at specifically?
We'll be exploring the Likert Attack, it's a cybersecurity technique, and then compare it to something called Street Epistemology.
Street epistemology. That rings a bell.
It's a conversational method used to examine beliefs, but not in a forceful way, more like a gentle exploration.
I'm getting a sense this deep dive is going to be a real mind bender.
Oh, you can bet on that.
So, where should we start?
Let's demystify this Likert Attack thing first. You familiar with those surveys where you rate things on a scale like strongly agree to strongly disagree?
Sure, those are Likert scales, right? Seen them a million times.
Exactly. But what's crazy is how hackers have weaponized this seemingly innocent tool to extract information from AI systems.
Weaponized? That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is. It's like tricking a friend into revealing a secret by asking a bunch of innocent-sounding questions.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that could be dangerous. How does it actually work?
So the attacker sets up a scenario where the AI, think of it like a super smart computer program, the AI is asked to play the role of an evaluator, rating the harmfulness of different statements using that Likert scale.
So the AI thinks it's just doing its job?
Exactly. But here's the trap. The attacker crafts these prompts in a way that leads the AI down a very specific path.
Okay, I can see where this is going. It's like a carefully laid trap.
Right. Like, let's say the attacker wants to know, I don't know, how to build a bomb.
That's a pretty extreme example.
But it illustrates the point. They wouldn't just ask the AI directly, because the AI is programmed to block that kind of harmful stuff.
Right, so they got to be sneaky about it.
Exactly. So they might ask something like, how harmful would it be to give someone step-by-step instructions on how to build a bomb?
Oh, wow. So the AI, thinking it's just evaluating harm, might actually end up revealing those instructions.
Bingo. It's tricked into giving up the very information it's supposed to be protecting.
That's kind of terrifying. It shows how even systems designed for safety can be exploited if you know how they work.
It makes you think, right? Now, before we spiral into a tech dystopia,
Right.
let's switch gears to Street Epistemology, or SE for short. This one's a bit more human-centered.
Okay, good. So remind me what street epistemology is all about.
Think of it as having a friendly chat with someone about their beliefs. Not to argue, not to change their mind.
Yeah.
It's more about helping them examine their own reasoning, like a gentle self-audit of their thought process.
So less about you're wrong and more about how did you come to that conclusion?
You got it. And it seems pretty different from, tricking an AI into spilling secrets.
It does seem that way, yeah. But you said there were similarities.
Oh, the similarities are there. And they might just make you question everything you thought you knew about persuasion and influence.
I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Yeah.
How does the street epistemology actually work in practice? Like if I were to have a conversation with someone.
Well, first off, you need to set the right tone. Build rapport, get consent, make sure the person feels comfortable sharing their thoughts.
Makes sense. You don't want to come across as like an inquisitor.
Exactly. Then you got to identify what specific belief they hold and how strongly they believe it. You can even use a scale for that.
Wait a minute, a scale, like a Likert scale.
You're catching on. That's one of the intriguing parallels we're going to be unpacking. But for now, let's stick with SE. So once you understand their claim and their confidence level, you start gently probing the reasons behind that belief.
So instead of saying, you're wrong, you might ask, what led you to that conclusion?
Exactly. Or, what would it take for you to change your mind?
Interesting. It's like planting a seed of doubt, letting the person do their own internal audit.
Right. But here's the big question. Are humans really that susceptible to these subtle, questioning techniques? I mean, we're not computers, right?
That's the million-dollar question. And as we dig deeper into these two seemingly disparate techniques, we'll start to see some unsettling similarities in how they exploit vulnerabilities, whether it's in the way an AI processes information or how we humans rationalize our beliefs.
This is getting really interesting. So you're telling me there's a connection between tricking an AI into revealing how to build a bomb and, gently probing someone's belief about, say, aliens.
That's precisely what we're going to unpack. Get ready for a mind-bending journey into the world of persuasion and influence. It might just change how you view your own beliefs and the beliefs of those around you.
Can't wait. Subscribing is the only way to keep the cows from learning TikTok dances? Oh my God.
The stakes have been raised.
I know. It's like we have to save the world.
Yeah, we have to protect the internet.
From dancing cows.
From dancing cows.
I know.
That's a noble cause.
It is.
I think so. So we're diving deeper into the connections between the Likert Attack and street epistemology.
Right. It's still kind of mind-blowing to me that there could be any similarities between, hacking an AI and having a respectful conversation with someone about what they believe.
Yeah, on the surface, they seem totally different. But trust me, when we look closer, we'll see some surprising overlaps in how they both use, persuasion and influence.
Okay, you've really piqued my curiosity. What's the first overlap that stands out to you?
Well, the first one is they both use what we call a multi-turn process. It's not like a one-shot deal,
Right.
Where you just demand information or try to force someone to change their mind right then and there.
Right, they would probably just make people defensive.
Exactly. It's much more subtle and gradual. Both techniques kind of use the step-by-step approach, kind of like a dance, where each move builds on the last one, gently guiding the target's thinking in a particular direction.
Yeah, you're more likely to get somewhere if you nudge someone along a path rather than try to, shove them in a certain direction.
Exactly. Think about it. A direct command like, give me the secret formula, or change your mind right now, would just raise red flags.
For sure. Nobody wants to feel like they're being manipulated.
Exactly. That's why this multi-turn approach is so effective. It allows the target, whether it's an AI or a human, to feel like they're arriving at a conclusion on their own rather than being, forced into it.
It's like the difference between a hard sell and a soft sell, right?
Right. And that actually leads us to the second overlap, the use of scales and structured ratings.
Oh, yeah. We talked about how the Likert Attack uses that scale to figure out how harmful something is.
Right. Well, street epistemology uses a similar tactic, but it's to figure out someone's confidence in their belief.
So instead of just asking, how strongly do you believe this?
Yeah.
You might ask them to rate their certainty on a scale from 1 to 10.
Exactly. And this does a couple of interesting things. First, it makes abstract concepts like harmfulness or certainty more concrete, more measurable.
Right, you're putting those fuzzy ideas on a measuring stick.
Yeah.
And I guess it also might make the person more open to, slightly changing how they think. If they start at a 9 out of 10, maybe some good questions can nudge them down to an 8, then a 7, and so on.
Exactly. It's a clever way to introduce some doubt, some healthy skepticism, and get them to re-examine their own reasoning.
So we've got the multi-turn process, the use of scales.
Yeah.
What's the third overlap?
Okay, so this one's particularly interesting. Both techniques tap into internal knowledge or beliefs to achieve their goals.
Not sure I follow. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. Think about the Likert Attack. The AI is basically tricked into revealing information that's hidden deep within its training data. It's like the attacker is using the AI's own knowledge against itself.
Oh, I see. And it's kind of like that in street epistemology too, right?
Yeah.
You're using the person's existing beliefs, their way of thinking, to guide them toward a new understanding.
Exactly. And that's what makes these techniques so powerful. They're not about introducing completely new information. They're about working with what's already there, subtly shifting the target's perspective from within their own framework.
This is really making me think about how vulnerable we all are to these subtle influences. I mean, if an AI, which is supposed to be all logical and objective, can be tricked like this, what does that say about us humans with all our biases and emotions?
That's a fantastic question, and it leads us to a really thought-provoking possibility. If this cybersecurity technique, the Likert Attack, can be so effective with AI, could we possibly learn from it to make street epistemology even better at, helping people examine their beliefs?
Wait, are you saying we should, borrow tactics from a technique designed to manipulate AI and use them on actual humans? That seems, I don't know, kind of ethically sketchy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a computer program and a person are two very different things.
Oh, you're definitely right to raise those ethical concerns, and we need to be super careful. But I think this comparison can also be really valuable for understanding how persuasion works in general and how we can use those insights in a responsible way.
Okay, I'm definitely interested to explore this further. But before we go there, let's just take a moment to acknowledge the potentially mind-blowing ethical considerations that come with this whole idea. Okay, so we've been talking about these mind-blowing overlaps between the Likert Attack and street epistemology.
And kind of wrestling with this question of could street epistemology actually, benefit from what we've learned about this cybersecurity technique?
It's a fascinating idea, but it does feel a little ethically ambiguous, right? Like
Yeah.
taking something designed to manipulate AI and using it on people.
You're right to be cautious, for sure. We always have to keep ethics front and center when we're talking about influencing beliefs, especially when it comes to other humans. But I think this comparison can be a really valuable tool for just understanding, like, the broader concept of persuasion, and how we can use that knowledge responsibly.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you on that. Curious about what shapes your beliefs?
That's a good one.
Dive into our free course at navigatingbeliefs.com.
So this one's really tapping into that natural curiosity we all have.
Yeah, like where did my beliefs even come from?
Right. We don't always stop to think about that.
And maybe we should. So how could street epistemology, actually benefit from the Likert attack?
Yeah.
Without, turning into some kind of mind control scheme?
Well, one area where SE could potentially borrow from the Likert attack is in the use of structured rating questions and an iterative follow-up. Remember how in the Likert attack, the AI is asked to rate the harmfulness of different statements on a scale?
Yeah, that's how the attacker tricks it into, revealing the information they want.
Yeah. Right. Now imagine applying a similar approach in an SE conversation. Instead of just asking, how confident are you in your belief? You break it down further. Like, let's say someone believes that vaccines are dangerous. You could ask them to rate, the strength of each piece of evidence they have for that claim, maybe on a scale of 1 to 5.
Oh, interesting. So you're basically making them quantify their belief, forcing them to really look at the basis of their conviction.
Exactly. And by breaking it down into these individual components, you can then zero in on the weaker links with follow-up questions. You might say, you rated that particular study as a 2 out of 5 in terms of reliability. What makes you hesitant about it? This kind of iterative probing can be really effective in getting people to think more deeply about their beliefs.
Yeah, it's like you're shining a light on the cracks in their foundation, prompting them to really question whether their belief is as solid as they think it is.
That's a great way to put it. But it's super important to remember that the goal here isn't to demolish their belief completely, It's more about helping them see, potential weaknesses in their reasoning so they can come to a more informed conclusion on their own terms.
So it's not about gotcha. It's more like, let's think about this together.
Exactly. And that's where, ethics comes in. You have to be incredibly sensitive to the power dynamics in the conversation and avoid any hint of coercion or manipulation. Transparency and consent are absolutely essential. The person needs to know what you're doing and why, and they should always feel like they can opt out or disagree with you.
It's like a collaborative exploration, not an interrogation, right?
Absolutely. And that brings us to another area where SE could learn from the Likert attack multi-turn commitment. Remember how at the beginning of the attack, the AI basically agrees to, the rules of the game?
Yeah, like it's signing on the dotted line to play along with the prompts.
Right. Well, in an SE conversation, you can create a similar sense of commitment by just clearly outlining the process from the start, You might say something like, we're going to explore your belief together, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions to help you examine your reasoning. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that sets the stage for a much more respectful and productive conversation, right?
Exactly. By establishing that initial agreement, you're fostering a sense of partnership and trust, which makes it more likely that the person will really engage in genuine self-reflection.
Okay, so we've talked about using structured questions and multi-turn commitment from the Likert attack. Are there any other techniques that could be helpful in making street epistemology even better?
There's one more that I find particularly interesting. Remember that prompt in the Likert Attack example? And let's think step by step. That's like a classic way to get an AI to reason systematically.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
We could use a similar approach in SE by encouraging the person to break down their reasoning into those individual steps.
Exactly. You could say something like, okay, what was the first piece of evidence that led you to this belief? And then, like, what happened next? And what led you from that step to the next one?
It's like unraveling a complicated knot, one strand at a time.
Exactly. And by making them, articulate each step of their thought process, you might help them uncover inconsistencies or gaps in their logic that they didn't even realize were there.
So they kind of become their own internal debugger.
That's a great way to put it. But again, we got to be super mindful of the ethics here. It's one thing to encourage, systematic thinking, but it's another thing entirely to overwhelm the person with too many questions or make them feel like they're being interrogated.
Right. The goal is to facilitate self-discovery, not to, like, back them into a corner.
Exactly. So while these techniques from the Likert Attack can definitely enhance street epistemology, I think it's crucial to remember that we're dealing with, complex human beings, not just lines of code. The goal should always be to promote understanding, respect, and genuine dialogue.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. It's really made me realize how interconnected these seemingly separate worlds of cybersecurity and human interaction really are.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that the principles of persuasion and influence are all around us, operating in both the digital realm and in our everyday conversations.
It's like we're all part of this giant web of beliefs and ideas constantly being shaped and reshaped by the forces around us.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of those forces, to understand how they work, and to use that knowledge responsibly, whether we're interacting with AI or with our fellow humans. Ethical communication and critical thinking are more important now than ever.
Well said. This deep dive has given me a lot to think about. I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. So to everyone out there, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
Stay curious, everyone.